So what is the difference between a memoir and an autobiography? An autobiography and a memoir are often used interchangeably, particularly the other way around. Somebody says, oh, I wrote my memoirs, meaning their autobiography. So this is my definition. An autobiography is written by somebody famous because there are people out there who want to know where they came from, what happened to them in their lives, how they got to be this famous person that they now are. It doesn't really necessarily have much of a story. It can be a sequence of events. A memoir, on the other hand, is a story. It's a story in the same way that a novel is a story. It's a story about how somebody met certain events in their life, and those events made something of them, or they changed something. They changed inside, they changed the world around them. So I think people read memoirs for the same reason that they read novels, and the connection with the reader is the same. So if that's the case, how do you know where your story begins and ends, right? An autobiography, on the whole, begins when you get born. A memoir doesn't. A memoir has to start at a place where some kind of transformation or self-realization starts to kick into place. So it may be a catastrophe. My memoir starts when my mother is killed in a car crash when I'm 4 years old. Obviously, I need something. I need a family, because I also didn't have a father at that point. I didn't know who my father was, and then I eventually got introduced to two different ones. But that's a different story. Point being, your memoir is going to start at a place where, let's call it a need, where a need becomes evident. My need was obviously immediately evident. I needed security, I needed a family, I needed a mother, I needed belonging. Sometimes it takes longer for the need to become evident in the course of the memoir, and it'll start somewhere. It starts. The Glass Castle by Jeanette is a really good example here. It starts with this extraordinary scene where she's 3 years old. She's cooking herself sausages because she's hungry, and she spills the boiling water all over herself. She gets taken to the hospital, and then her father sort of spirits her out of the hospital because they're free spirits and they don't do hospitals. And you get that she's living in this sort of rather exciting alternative family, but the irresponsibility is so staggering that even if this little 3-year-old child doesn't realize that these are desperately irresponsible parents, the reader certainly does on page 1. So that's what I mean by a need becoming apparent, a lack becoming apparent, the lack of a mother, the lack of a responsible family to look after you, the lack of security in both cases. And the memoir ends when that need is somehow come to terms with, when that lack is somehow not necessarily fulfilled. I'm not going to spirit my mother back from the other side, but you can come to terms with it. You can come to peace with it. If it's the lack that can't be fulfilled, sometimes it's a lack that can be, or can be fulfilled in a different way. There's a wonderful memoir by Min Kim called Gone. She's a concert violinist, and her Stradivarius was stolen at King's Cross railway station in London. And so it's, partly it's the story of her relationship with this instrument, and she does get it back, but she can't keep it. Sorry, was it a Stradivarius? Yes, anyway. Then she gets another violin that she doesn't love quite the same, but she starts to build a relationship with a new one. And so that's a new peace that she's reached with the loss of her violin. So I've kind of gone off on a tangent here, but I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about how a memoir takes shape, how you find that shape in the events of your life. If you're not writing an autobiography, your challenge in writing a memoir is to pull a story out of the continuum. There are many ways to do it, but the one way to do it, in my experience, is not to write an outline before you start and try and do it with your rational mind. Your imaginative mind is much more hooked in to what makes you, you. And your imaginative mind, if you give it the space to play and explore, will help you find where your story begins and where it ends.